Hello, my name's Andrew, and today we're doing a first impression review of the Freet RICHMOND version 2. Let's check it out. Up front, you've got a wide toe box. It's a little more squared off at the tip, which I like, which is kind of typical for Freet in terms of shape. You've got a good amount of room through the midfoot here, and then it has a full leather upper. It's kind of like medium soft, so it's got a lot of flexibility, but a little bit of structure up here, so it doesn't have quite as much flexibility as something that's a super soft leather. But this makes it a little bit more water resistant. And it's also got an extra wraparound layer here for protection with some stitching, and then same thing in the back, which also helps with durability and just kind of like dealing with slush and rain and that sort of thing. The sole wraps around decently high up on the side, so when I was taking them out for a walk, I was able to go in a little bit of water without any leakage into the shoe. And it is stitched as well, which is always great for long-term durability. But that is a place where it can let some water in, like if you're just going through slush for, an hour or two and it's just really soaking wet. But overall, if you treat it with some leather balsam like beeswax and lanolin, the water resistance is usually very high for a medium thick leather shoe like this. I like the softness of the leather inside. It has a really nice natural feeling lining. You can wear it barefoot if you want. Although you might not want to do that in colder weather. But I took it out and it was down near around 32 degrees, and my setup that I wore was kind of like Injinji merino wool toe socks, which I like because they have a little more breathability between your toes. But then the merino wool is insulated and all that. This is kind of like a mid-weight sock, and I think if you are planning on wearing these in a super cold climate and you're gonna add something like a thicker smart wool, you might want to size up because they work true to size for me, but when you start stacking up multiple layers of socks, it gets pretty tight in here, both in terms of the volume and the length. So yeah, that's my sizing tip. In the back, it's sculpted down a little bit here, so it felt pretty good, for my ankle moving back and forth. It's got a little bit of a taper here, so the heel lock is pretty decent, but I think I'd like a little bit more curve. I could feel a bit of play here, but one thing that helps is, it's kind of hard to show because it's dark in the shoe, but there's a ridge right here that helps lock your heel in, and then if you snug the laces up, it's pretty good. Creates kind of like a Peter Pan, sort of lockdown here, which is the kind of classic desert boot vibe. Also, because the leather has some nice softness, I didn't find it needed any breaking in. Sometimes when you have a little bit more firm leather, you can get some pressure here, but the leather's soft enough that it wasn't really pressing anywhere on my foot. Unless I put, like I said, a really thick pair of socks in there, and then it starts to get a little bit tighter, a little more pressure on the top of your foot. But in terms of the sole, it's 6.5 millimeters, so it's got a decent amount of flexibility, can twist it pretty good, and also horizontally as well. But they've upgraded the sole so that it has a little bit more durability and protection for long-term use. You could use it as like a lightweight work boot for cool weather. And for the tread, it's got a mix of Freet's normal triangle shapes and then these sort of like bigger hexagonal panels, which definitely add a lot of durability to the boot. Like if you're walking over some glass or nails or anything like that, they have a hard time getting through here because there's a lot of density. But it hasn't sacrificed too much flexibility. It's not as flexible as something like Freet's lighter styles like the Freet Vibe, something that's meant for running, but this is more of a casual shoe that you would use for walking around cities and office wear, that sort of thing. It has a good amount of protection for trails as well. Like if you're walking on gravel, when I was going out on my walk, I go through this concrete section where there's all sorts of loose gravel, and it handled it completely fine. This is a sole you could probably get 5,000 miles out of if you take care of it and you're not twisting, or scuffing the shoe as you come down. If you're just rolling smoothly, this kind of sole will last you a long time. That said, I could kind of feel the panels here, and I think this will probably wear down a little bit over time, but I would like if they broke them up a little bit more, because I don't know how much extra durability it actually adds to have the thicker panels. I think Freet's rubber is generally pretty durable in my experience, so I don't think that they need these one-piece panels here, and if they just like cut them like the rest of the triangle tread, I think that would add just a little bit more flexibility, because when you're walking on just pure pavement, you can feel a little bit of pressure here. So I found it kind of helped to add an insole in there. You can use the one that comes with it, Freet's, which is just a tiny bit of foam, which definitely evens out the lugs there. Or my personal favorite is wool felt insole. This is a little bit thinner, which is nice if you're someone that has a little bit higher volume foot and you don't want to take up that room, with a thicker foam insole, but it has a ton of flexibility You know, it smells nice, it's natural. But one area where it's not as useful is if you're going up and down hills or something like that, because then this kind of insole has a little bit more structure. You know, it's not gonna slide around in there. So pros and cons, but generally I like this for just a little bit more insulation. And it's kind of interesting because like when I went out, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get by. Like I said, it was lower 30s and all I was wearing was a single layer of Injinjis, right? But it was pretty warm. And that's the nice thing about leather, is that it's naturally insulating. Like some of my synthetic boots that have more insulation built up in there, or maybe they're a little bit more roomy, I have to wear multiple layers of socks to keep them warm down near 30 degrees. But with these, you know, it's pretty surprising because they're a mid-cut boot, right? You know, they're not even higher, but I went out walking for an hour and it was snowing and all that, and you know, my feet stayed pretty warm. Like the name suggests, a desert boot can also be worn in warmer temperatures. I think these probably, I mean, it's hard to tell right now because it's winter in New York, but probably I would say up to like 70 degrees. If you got a little bit higher than that, I think the medium thick leather would start to feel a little bit too much. You know, there are thinner options for a desert boot, which we can talk about, but I think this is a really nice mid temperature option for like spring and winter and late fall, when it's kind of like, you know, up to like 60 and down to 30 or maybe a little bit below. And then one last note on the tread, I found that had a decent amount of grippiness when you're just on roads, but then when you add like a slippery layer of powder or black ice, it's not going to give you any more grip than really any other sole is. And that's just something to know with any shoe, whether it's barefoot or a cushion shoe, is that once you start getting that slippery layer, there's just nothing for the rubber to grab onto, no matter how aggressive it is. So you always want to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is the best sole that you can wear in the winter. If you want a lightweight option, this is the Vivo Barefoot Gobi, also a desert boot style, but it has a thinner sole and also thinner upper, a little bit more flexibility. It is lower in the toe box than Freet, and not quite as much protection here for water resistance. So this is one that's a little bit better in warmer weather, drier as well. But it's also got a leather lining, so it feels really nice. And then also leather on the sole. That's one thing I forgot to mention about the Richmond, is that it has a it's hard to see because it's so dark in there. But yeah, it's got a synthetic lining on the bottom and you can actually hear it. It's got some nice scratchiness to it, which is important because it provides a little more friction, you know, so your foot's not sliding around in there. I mean, it's not a running shoe, so it's not a big deal, but that's something that's different about the Vivo Gobi, is that it has the leather there, so you can see and you can hear when I run my finger across it, it's just a little bit smoother. So you can feel like you're slipping around in this one a bit. In terms of the sole, it's 3 millimeters, so a little bit thinner than Freet with the Richmond, and a little bit more barefoot kind of feel. You get a bit more sensitivity here, where with the Richmond, it's a bit more blunted, although you can feel stones and sticks and stuff like that, which is nice. Also has a stitched sole, but yeah, it's just a little bit closer to barefooting and better for warmer weather. Another good lightweight option is the Groundies Milano, and this one has an even thinner leather upper. It's really soft, it feels very comfortable to wear barefoot. Has a wide toe box, kind of similar to the Vivo Gobi. And it's, you know, they're pretty comparable to Freet with the Richmond, honestly. But because it's a lighter weight leather, I find that it stretches out just a bit more. Although any leather will kind of stretch over time, which is a nice thing about leather. But still really comfortable on the inside, has a nice soft leather lining. And then in terms of the sole, it's 5 millimeters, so kind of right in the middle. Still feels really lightweight, a little bit thinner than Freet, but a little bit thicker than Vivo Barefoot. And then has a minimal tread like the others, so not too much of a difference in terms of grip. But Freet's definitely going to be the most durable, and Vivo Barefoot probably next, and then this one would be last, because Groundies is more of a casual brand, and I feel like the rubber just is a bit more soft, you know, and gummy, which feels nice, but it will wear down faster on things like gravel. Finally, if you want something super warm, this is the Isla Tixi Winter, and this is the warmest barefoot shoe I own. It's not like a full cut boot, you know, I've never seen anything like this before that has so much insulation. It's got this really nice, soft, puffy fur inside, and so you can see how thick it is. This thing is super duper warm. I can get these down to 0 degrees, which I can't do with any other shoe that's, you know, kind of mid-cut like this. I really love the chocolate color on these. Has a wide toe box, although the fur does take up quite a bit of room in there, so I sized up to a 45. I would definitely recommend sizing up if you're living in a cold climate especially. But the upper is kind of medium thick, sort of like the Freet Richmond, maybe a little bit softer. The Freet Richmond is a little bit more work booty. And the water resistance is pretty decent, like the others, a little bit better than Vivo Barefoot, and I would say Freet is probably the best just because it has a little more structure to the leather, but also stitched sole. And then this has the most rugged tread out of the 4 that we've looked at. Still has a pretty good amount of flexibility everywhere in the shoe. You can still twist it, but it definitely has a more aggressive lug pattern for going on some light trails, even some hills, you know, because it'll grip into the snow and slush, stuff like that. And then overall, my only con with these is that I wish they made a taller boot version, which would be awesome. All right, so that's my first impression review of the Freet Richmond 2, and I'll let you guys know how it goes in the long-term review. But in the meantime, if you'd like to support the channel, you can shop the referral links down below, browse and filter more products with the shoe finder tool at my website, barefootwear.org, or watch my zero drop transition video to learn more about barefooting. Finally, if you have a question about the Freet Richmond or about barefoot shoes in general, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.